Good morning. Today is Wednesday, January 5th, 2010. This is Barnstable This Morning. I'm Nick Cortez, your host for the next 90 minutes of insight and perspective from the town's top decision makers into all the issues that affect your life as a resident or a visitor to the town of Barnstable. Well, welcome into the very first Business Wednesday edition of the year. We'll make our trip around the town's business community, beginning first with a trip to the Hyannis Area Chamber of Commerce. Jessica Tinty, the interim president and CEO, will join us to take a look back on the chamber's year and to take a look ahead at priorities for 2011, as we've done with so many of our guests so far on this very first week of 2011. And then today in the show as well, we'll speak with Mark Nelson. He is the principal of the Horsley Witten Group, who has been a longtime environmental consultant for the Barnstable Municipal Airport. And Mark will be talking with us a little bit about some of the back and forth that went on towards the end of last year in the papers and at public meetings regarding the questions of water quality at the Barnstable Airport and whether or not contaminants from the airport still are affecting the ponds and the water wellhead protection areas in the airport property. And additionally speaking today, we'll talk to Elizabeth Werfbane, the executive director of the Hyannis Main Street Business Improvement District. Our first Cape Cod healthcare segment of the year happens today as well, and much more to come, including Regulatory Services Director Tom Geiler. Plenty of information to bring your way today too, and Melissa Chartrand is the keeper of information. She'll bring you today's headlines right now. Good morning, Melissa.
Good morning, Nick. It's clear and a cold 31 degrees in Hyannis this morning. Beacon Hill will be bustling today as the new legislative session gets underway. Newly elected State Senator Dan Wolf and Barnstable State Representatives Randy Hunt and David Vieira will be among the many sworn in. Congressman Bill Keating will begin his work representing the 10th District on Capitol Hill when he is sworn in later today in D.C. The entire fire community feels a great loss as retired Chief Richard Fahrenkopf passed away Monday night at the age of 82. A dedicated public servant, Fahrenkopf had a 35-year career with the Hyannis Fire Department. The father of 6, 4 of his sons have followed in a career in fire service, including 2 serving as captains at the Hyannis Fire Department. Visiting hours are this Sunday from 4 to 8 p.m. at the John Lawrence Funeral Home in Marston's Mills, and a funeral service takes place on Monday at 10 a.m. at St. Francis Xavier Church in Hyannis. Residents can receive several free vaccinations from influenza, pneumonia, and DTaP during the Health Department's multi-vaccination clinic next Friday, January 14th, at the Barnstable High School Field House from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Call the Health Department with any questions. The American Red Cross Cape Cod and Islands chapter is encouraging the public to be prepared for the next winter storm. A special checklist with tips on how to be better prepared before the storm and information on what to do after the storm hits is available on their website at cciredcross.org. In sports, the Celtics will be shooting for their 3rd straight victory when the San Antonio Spurs come to the Garden tonight. Game time 7:30. The Bruins are idle tonight. They return home tomorrow to face the Minnesota Wild at 7 p.m. In local sports action, the girls' hockey team takes on Midfield today at the HYCC. That takes place at 4 p.m. Hundreds of skaters from around the world will travel to Hyannis to compete in the U.S. Figure Skating Second Nations Cup this April at the HYCC. Tickets are on sale now. The full details are at the HYCC website. The Hyannis Golf Course on Route 132 Hyannis is now booking tee times and outings for the 2011 season. Membership renewals are also available. The Cape Cod Riptides girls softball program will be running Friday evening clinics at the Barnstable Horace Mann Charter School. That takes place in the gym. That school's in the Marston's Mills area from 6 to 8 p.m. It starts this Friday, January 7th, and then again on the 21st. The clinics cover all skills. It's just $15 a session. You can get more information by emailing capecodriptides@yahoo.com. Additional clinics will take place in February, March, and April. We now turn our attention to the seas in Nantucket Sound, where our friends at Highline Cruises welcome us on board into the wheelhouse of passenger ferry Gray Lady. We will hear a marine weather report from Captain Andy Castrenz while we take a look at the current weather conditions at Hyannis Harbor.
Good morning, Barnstable. This is the Highline Daily Boat Report. I'm Captain Castrenz here on the high-speed ferry Gray Lady. Out on Nantucket Sound this morning, we have clear skies, a northwest wind, 10 to 15 knots. Seas are northwest, about 1 foot. Visibility is 10 to 12 miles. The water temperature is 38 degrees. The next high tide in Hyannis will be at 12:35 this afternoon. For the rest of the day, we expect the wind to remain out of the northwest 10 to 15, maybe gusting to around 20. Once again, for Barnstable this morning, this is Captain Castrenz aboard the high-speed ferry Gray Lady. We hope everyone out there has a good day.
Good morning once again, and welcome into this first Business Wednesday edition of the year here at Barnstable this morning. I'm Nick Cortez alongside Melissa Chartrand.
Good morning, Nick.
How are you today, Melissa?
I'm doing well. I have to tell you, Tom is away. Tom is a terrible snorer, I'm sorry to say. So I don't sleep at all when he's home. So I think I'm going to do so great when he's away. But because he's away, I don't sleep well either.
Really?
I can't win.
Wow.
I could not sleep last
Can't live
night.
with him, can't live without him.
Exactly.
Now, I'm actually really curious about this because I snore a lot too, and I give my girlfriend problems for the same reason that you have problems. She can't sleep, and the following morning I'm riddled with guilt because I slept like a log and she's tossing and turning all night. So what do? You just punch him in the side?
I do. I used to be when we were first together. I would just stop snoring. Now it's a hard punch to the back.
Okay.
It is. It's
you don't
angry.
make him do the breathe right strips or the mouthpiece or whatever?
He tried those and they'd wake up in his hair, on his chin, on me. So I don't like being so angry. He feels guilty too. He feels terrible. It's that disrupted sleep.
I don't like you being so angry either
I know.
because then I have to come and stand next to you for 9 minutes every morning. Yeah.
But that's why, I think in his case, it's directly related to weight gain. I'm sharing all this information. It's a good thing he's away.
It's true, because Tom is a regular watcher of this program, and if he does watch it on the internet,
guy.
Sorry, Tom, and
He's
he is a nice guy too. But I need the snoring advice. You and I have the same problem.
So that's my resolution for him: lose weight, stop snoring.
Okay.
It's easy. I'll be happy.
Or just learn to punch harder.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, today here on Business Wednesday, we are making our way around the town's business community, and we'll start with Jessica Tinty, the interim president and CEO of the Hyannis Area Chamber of Commerce. We'll do the look back, look forward thing, as we've done a number of times already so far with our guests this week, and we'll get a bit of an update as well as to where the Chamber's Board of Directors stands with finding a permanent successor to Deb Converse, who of course left that position a few months ago. Then after that, we'll get into it with Regulatory Services Director Tom Geiler, and this is a topic that Tom brought up to me yesterday, and I figured it would be good to talk about today because when the new flood maps first came out, there was lots of poster boards being placed around town halls all across Cape Cod, and people were wondering, how this is going to affect my flood insurance, how's this going to affect my property, and after that, I feel like the story sort of fell off a little bit, but maybe even as soon as June of this year, all those new flood maps are going to go into effect, and you may find your home in a flood zone when it wasn't before. So Tom's going to talk a little bit about how you can make sure you protect yourself now and potentially save a lot of money in the process. And considering that this is our business-oriented show, saving money is certainly information that we like to bring your way here on the program. So let's get into it right now with Jessica Tinty, Hyannis Area Chamber of Commerce CEO, and then Regulatory Services Director Tom Geiler will follow shortly after that. Good morning, everyone. The time now 7:41 here at Barnstable this morning, and we kick off Business Wednesday with Hyannis Area Chamber of Commerce Interim President and CEO Jessica Tinty. And she joins us this morning from, of all places, sunny Arizona, even though I would imagine that the sun maybe is just barely coming up at this moment. And Jessica, we certainly appreciate you waking up so early for us this morning.
Thank you, Nick.
And Happy New Year to you, by the way.
Yes, Happy New Year.
Now, speaking of the new year, Jessica, we've done this with a number of our guests so far this week, and I'd like to do it with you, too. Let's first take a look back on 2010 at the Hyannis Area Chamber of Commerce. Of course, the biggest news that was made was the leadership change, and then, of course, Lee McGraw, who'd worked with the Chamber for a number of years, also left at the end of the year. The Chamber has obviously experienced a lot of changes, and currently, I believe, has 2 full-time employees left, you included. So I wonder how you would characterize the road that your organization has traveled in the past year.
We've had a lot of change, obviously.
Yes.
It's been a good year overall, I'd have to say. We're looking obviously towards 2011. We're very excited.
Before we get too far into 2011, in your time with the Chamber over the course of the past year, can you pick out a couple of things that you'd say were accomplishments that you guys were most proud of?
Oh boy, everything we do we're very proud of. We've helped with the sign issue, the homeless issue as well. We're working with.
Sure.
So we've had some really good accomplishments. We've had some great events. The car show, again, a great hit. We had great weather.
Yes.
Golf tournament, also we moved it to Willow Bend. It was a great event. Same thing with the annual meeting. Everything was great. And then also to hear that a lot of our businesses this past year saw either an increase or stayed even with last year was very positive.
Yep, I'm sorry, go ahead.
We also, okay. We also heard, that December was a great month. I know one retail business was up 16% over last year, which was fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think overall, 2010 was a pretty good year for a lot of people.
You still kind of think the mode of thinking now is, as long as you're doing less bad than you were the year prior, you're doing well?
I'm thinking as long as people can stay even with the previous year
Sure.
or even up, I think it's very positive. It shows that we're going in the right direction as far as the economy goes, and that, people are starting to come out of that no spending feeling, trying to save as much as they can, because who knows what's going to happen.
Now, speaking of not knowing what's going to happen, I think that I'm going to ask you anyway what you think is going to happen, because as you are still the head honcho at the Chamber for the time being at the very least, you're leading the organization into the new year, and I wonder what you think, as we still are in this sort of recessionary mode, but maybe beginning to recover from it, what you think that the Barnstable business community needs most from the Hyannis Area Chamber of Commerce in the year to come?
They need our support and our help to bring not only the locals to their businesses, but to also bring, the tourism piece as well. That's what they're going to need from us.
And what can you do, and what do you plan to do to deliver on that need?
Well, we're still working on our program of work, so we're hoping to get the finalized board approval this month, and once that has been accomplished, we will be able to talk more about it. Okay.
And can you give me at least a little bit of a secret preview? Little secret preview? No? Yes? No?
Honestly, Nick, I
That's just fine, Jessica. Now, I know that one of the things that you are planning on rolling out in 2011 is the joint guidebook between the Hyannis Area Chamber of Commerce and the Yarmouth Chamber of Commerce. Can you tell us a little bit about when we might see that and what we might see specifically when that comes out?
Well, the book, as you said, is joint between us and Yarmouth, and we're hoping to our goal to have the book on the street by the February school vacation, which is typically what we do every year.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little different for Yarmouth. They kind of wait until more March, April, May in there before their book comes out. So We're looking for February. The book is going to have Yarmouth members as well as Hyannis members. It's going to have things to do in Yarmouth, things to do in Hyannis. It's just going to be it's a bit bigger. The distribution is going to be a larger number than it was last year for us. It's a great partnership, and we're actually looking forward to doing it again next year.
You know, I find it interesting, Jessica. Regional cooperation has been on the lips of so many people in government across Cape Cod for a number of years now, and we see more and more of that coming together as a result of necessity, if for no other reason. Do you find that in your line of work that cooperation between the individual towns' Chamber of Commerce is happening more often, not only with this project, but maybe with other ventures as well?
Well, it happens all the time, and whether it's this or something else, we all work very well together. Each of the chambers, you know, we all support each other. We help out as much as we can. It's not necessarily about, well, we're in Barnstable, so we don't want to help out Yarmouth. It's not that at all. We're all in it for the same reason. We all want to get people here to the Cape, you know, get them into our towns, get them spending money, you know, all of that. So it's very important that we all work together, and it's been happening for many, many years. It's not something that just started.
Well, that's great to hear, because of course, as I'm sure you well know, parochialism tends to reign from time to time across many sectors of Cape Cod life, and it's nice to hear that folks who are promoting tourism and business have been banding together for quite some time now. Now, but before we let you go, Jessica, I'm sure many people are curious as to what you can let us know about your board of directors searching for a permanent successor to you, whether you're that successor or not. What can you tell us about the search for a new president and CEO?
Well, the Chamber has hired the executive suite to do the search. So, and they've actually posted the job in the newspaper, and I believe it's running for the next 2 Sundays as well. They're going to handle that portion of it. All the resumes will go into the executive suite. They'll filter them through, take out the ones that obviously don't qualify. Once they get a handful, or I believe it's 20 resumes or so, they're going to then send them over to the search committee, and the search committee will take it from there, which the search committee is made up of 7 people. Mm-hmm. Business people in the community, obviously, a couple of board members, past presidents, also someone from the JFK Foundation. You know, so we've got a great mix of people on the search committee. They'll narrow it down to a couple, and then it'll go to the full board, and the full board will interview and go from there. And hopefully we'll have a new president and CEO. I think they're hoping March, but you never know.
Any chance that it might be you?
I don't know.
Are you throwing your hat into the ring at least?
I can't answer that.
Oh man, lame. But that's okay. I understand the confidentiality issues. But let me ask you this though: regardless of who gets chosen, you or otherwise, do you plan on staying with the chamber?
Absolutely. I absolutely love my job. I love the people. I love the members. I love the community. It's a great place to work. So I definitely am staying.
And I'm sure you love talking to us at 5:30 in the morning from Arizona. Jessica, thank you very much for joining us, and Happy New Year to you once again. We certainly look forward to talking to you throughout the early portion of 2011.
Thank you, Nick. Happy New Year.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
The time now is 7:50 here at Barnstable this morning. Coming up in just a few moments, we'll talk to our Director of Regulatory Services, Tom Geiler. Some important information for you as flood maps around Cape Cod are changing. You may find yourself in a flood zone when you didn't before, and talk a little bit about how you can save some serious money right now if you want some flood insurance to protect your home. And considering that we live in a coastal community, probably a pretty good idea. What else is a good idea? Well, learning a little bit about the weather, and to bring you that, here's Melissa Chartrand.
Good morning, Nick. It's a mostly sunny day today. Nice and mild for this time of year. Temps are in the high 30s. Sunset at 4:25. Tonight it will be clear but quite frigid, more like January temps, because temps will drop to the teens. Tomorrow, sunny with temps again in the mid-30s. The weekend forecast, we're still not set. Right now, I think we'll go with the talk of snow sometime on Friday heading into Saturday, but we'll watch that as the week progresses. Currently, it's 31 degrees here in Hyannis. There is much more to come on Barnstable this morning. Coming up next is Director of Regulatory Services Tom Geiler. But first, let's take a look at the current weather conditions at Hyannis Harbor.
The time now 7:53 here at Barnstable this morning, and Business Wednesday rolls on with some good advice and a big reminder from our Director of Regulatory Services, Tom Geiler. Tom, Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you, Nick.
And, Tom and I were exchanging emails over the course of the holiday break a little bit, and Tom asked, now that we're in year 2 of Barnstable this morning, when we be getting our own dressing rooms. And, Tom, I'm waiting for the same thing, too. I'm waiting for a makeup artist as well.
Well, hopefully the new studios will be fitting for the staff that we have. But,
are you making room for us over at 200 Main, Tom?
Well, we have a second floor that phase 2 is still unfinished.
So phase 2 is obviously moving our TV studio out of the basement of Town Hall and coming and joining you over there.
Well, it could be, but first we need some money. And get that second floor finished.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Well, you know what? We're waiting for the day. You say the word, and we'll move everything right over there, and we'll come and join you. Now, Tom, in any case, today, as I've been mentioning since the top of the show, we're talking a little bit about changes rather updates, I should say, in FEMA's flood maps across Cape Cod. A massive update was done after the maps were 17 years old, and now a lot of folks who weren't situated in flood zones before, or weren't identified as being in flood zones, may find themselves in that situation now. And I know that today we're talking a little bit about flood insurance and the importance of getting it before it's too late. What can you tell us?
Well, this is sort of a last call type of thing.
Sure.
The study has been going on now for a better part of 2 years. The federal government updates flood maps on a regular basis. The coastline changes due to storm damage and erosion over the years, so the mitigation necessary to ensure that we've identified the flood zones correctly and being able to anticipate where flooding might occur is as accurate as it can be. So I think what we're looking at today is we've done a lot of outreach. We want to make sure that anybody that might be impacted is aware of it and aware of what they can do. There's a lot of information available from the Federal Emergency Management people, from the town, and the town's website has all the maps on it. Those maps might be a little bit difficult to navigate on the average computer because of just the sheer size of the maps, and depending on the capacity of your computer, that may or may not work. But anybody can come into 200 Main or call and discuss their particular property if they're not sure. The difference between the flood insurance rates for a property not in a flood zone and property in a flood zone can be up to 10 times greater.
Wow.
So
and
this opportunity is one where prior to the adoption of the maps, if you acquire flood zone insurance for the zone that you're in, then you're changed to an actual to a flood zone. You go from not being in a flood zone to being in a flood zone, and there are a whole bunch of different categories of flood zones, but the federal government will grandfather you.
Right, and is it a permanent grandfathering where if you buy a policy before the new maps go into effect, you have that low rate for as long as you have your policy, or is it a situation where it gets flipped over and you end up having to pay the higher rates eventually?
Well, my experience is that nothing is forever in the insurance business, but
yeah, okay.
But that's the intent here.
Sure,
is to permanently grandfather those properties that are currently not in the flood zone but near a flood zone and are going to be moved into a flood zone if they acquire the insurance before the maps are adopted, which my guess will be is certainly within 6 months. Their property will be subject to the old rates, not the new rates.
Okay.
And that could be significant.
Yeah, absolutely. That could save people a lot of money, and that's why I'm glad we're talking about it, especially here on Business Wednesday on Barnstable this morning. Now, Tom, can you explain why, because I'm sure people have been wondering this, they would find themselves in a flood zone today where they didn't find themselves in the flood zone in the last set of maps that were created?
Well, it's the changing flood risks, the weather events, the development, storms, erosion, wind, all of those things play a role in changing the flood paths. We all have noticed, particularly in coastal areas, that after a storm, you go down and say, "Wow, where did that dune go?" Or there's a breach right through an area.
Sure.
Where you're going to be getting direct ocean contact where you didn't have that before. You had a barrier beach or something out in front of you. Mm-hmm. There's lots of reasons, for that to happen, and that's the reason that the federal government does update these maps on at least a 20-year cycle.
Tom, last question before we let you go today. When might these new flood zone maps be put into effect officially? So I guess the real question is, when will people end up running out of time to get a grandfathered, cheaper policy?
Well, the target date was 2010, but that has been extended. Okay. So I don't believe there's an awful lot of time left. You don't know exactly what that date will be, but the best advice we can give anybody is if they have property that is in proximity to potential flood areas, they should at least find out, look at these new maps, understand what the danger is for their property, talk to their insurance people. They can come into 200 Main, or they can call the number to call in the Conservation Division is 508-862-4093. Okay. And that's Fred Stepanis. Okay. And he'd be happy to walk you through this and explain what is changing and how it might impact your particular lot. Don't miss the opportunity to save a significant amount of money on potential flood insurance.
Excellent. And we kind of killed two birds with one stone, a little bit of consumer protection, a little bit of conservation, and some great advice from you today to start the new year, Tom. We certainly thank you for it, and we look forward to talking to you throughout 2011.
Okay, enjoy the day.
All right, Tom, you too. Okay. Bye-bye. The time is 8:01 here at Barnstable this morning. Just getting started here on Business Wednesday. Coming up in just a few, we'll talk to Mark Nelson, principal of the Horsley Witten Group, longtime environmental consultants for the Barnstable Municipal Airport. Mark will be talking to us a little bit about the many questions towards the end of last year about water quality at the wells near Barnstable Municipal Airport because, of course, the Silent Spring Institute and a number of other situations have identified the airport as a possible source of contaminants. And we'll talk to Mark about the history of that situation, what's been done since then, and how things stand over there now in terms of state and federal drinking water standards. Before we get to that, though, let's get to Melissa Chartrand. She has a look at today's news.
Good morning, Nick. Good morning, everyone. It's clear and a cold 31 degrees in Hyannis this morning. Beacon Hill will be bustling today as the new legislative session gets underway. Newly elected State Senator Dan Wolf and Barnstable State Representatives Randy Hunt and David Vieira will be among the many sworn in. Congressman Bill Keating will begin his work representing the 10th District on Capitol Hill when he is sworn in later today in D.C. The entire fire community feels a great loss as retired Chief Richard Fahrenkopf passed away Monday night at the age of 82. A dedicated public servant, Fahrenkopf had a 35-year career with the Hyannis Fire Department. The father of 6, 4 of his sons have followed a career in fire service, including 2 serving as captains at the Hyannis Fire Department. Visiting hours are this Sunday from 4 to 8 at the John Lawrence Funeral Home in Marston's Mills, and funeral service on Monday at 10 a.m. at St. Francis Xavier Church in Hyannis. Residents can receive several free vaccinations from influenza, pneumonia, and DTaP during the Health Department's multi-vaccination clinic next Friday, January 14th at the Barnstable High School Fieldhouse from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. You may call the Health Department for more details. The American Red Cross Cape Cod and Islands chapter is encouraging the public to be prepared for the next winter storm. A special checklist with tips on how to be better prepared before, during, and after the storm is available on their website. You can find that at cciredcross.org. In sports, the Celtics will be shooting for their 3rd straight victory when the San Antonio Spurs come to the Garden tonight, game time at 7:30. The Bruins are idle tonight. They return home tomorrow to face the Minnesota Wild at 7. In local sports action, the girls' hockey team takes on Midfield at the HYCC this afternoon. That's at 4 p.m. Hundreds of skaters from around the world will travel to Hyannis to compete in the U.S. Figure Skating Second Nations Cup this April at the HYCC. You can get your tickets now. All the information is either there at the HYCC or log on to their website. The Hyannis Golf Course on Route 132 is now booking tee times and outings for the 2011 season, and membership renewals are available as well. The Cape Cod Riptide Girls Softball Program will be running Friday evening clinics at the Barnstable Horace Mann Charter School Gym in Marston's Mills from 6 to 8 p.m. beginning this Friday, January 7th, and again on the 21st. The clinics cover all skills. It's just $15 a session. More information is available by emailing capecodriptides@yahoo.com. Additional clinics will be run in February, March, and April. We now turn our attention to the seas in Nantucket Sound, where our friends at Highline Cruises welcome us on board into the wheelhouse of passenger ferry Gray Lady. We will hear a marine weather report from Captain Andy Castrenz while we take a look at current weather conditions at Hyannis Harbor.
Good morning, Barnstable. This is the Highline Daily Boat Report. I'm Captain Castrenz here on the high-speed ferry Gray Lady. Out on Nantucket Sound this morning, we have clear skies, a northwest wind, 10 to 15 knots. Seas are northwest, about 1 foot. Visibility is 10 to 12 miles. The water temperature is 38 degrees. The next high tide in Hyannis will be at 12:35 this afternoon. For the rest of the day, we expect the wind to remain out of the northwest 10 to 15, maybe gusting to around 20. Once again, for Barnstable this morning, this is Captain Castrenz aboard the high-speed ferry Gray Lady. We hope everyone out there has a good day.
Welcome back to Business Wednesday here at Barnstable this morning. I'm Nick Cortez alongside Melissa Chartrand.
Good morning.
Melissa, what do you have in your hands there?
Well, I'm just saying. that there are words sometimes that get a bit overused.
Well, that's true. I mean, I think that I'm a pretty big-time professional in overusing the same phrases over and over and over and over again.
But some words, they just are perfect. I hate to say goodbye, but what we're talking about is Lake Superior State University came out with their 2011 list of banished words, including, I'm just saying.
I'm just saying?
I'm just saying. Viral. Epic, you love that word. Epic and fail,
yes.
Also.
Well, epic fail either
Epic
separately or together, I think has become an extremely commonly used either word or phrase.
Well, they seem
and I really enjoy that a lot because it just describes, well, an epic fail so well.
It sure does. But it says it's overused of epic proportions.
What else is on the list?
BFF.
Well, BFF isn't even a word. It's a stupid text acronym.
Aha moment. Do you have aha moments?
Rarely.
Man up. I'm just saying, Facebook and Google is verbs. They say that's overused. And live life to the fullest. But how can you not live life to the fullest?
Well, I have a problem with a lot of this stuff. Of course, Facebook and Googling are overused as verbs, but that's because billions of people use Google every day,
sure they
and
do.
There's like 500 million Facebook users. So, yeah, of course it's overused.
In fact, Facebook just overcame Google as the #1 site visited every day.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
I heard that the other day.
Lake Superior State University.
Lake
Where
Superior
is that
State.
anyway?
Oh, out there, out in Michigan.
Okay.
And they've been doing this since 1976. It
It's
just
good that
seems
they're
to
known
have
for
stuck.
something, I
Yeah.
suppose. Sorry if there's any Lake Superior State alums out there.
So maybe you should send us words that we overuse, right? We want you to email us, tell us all sorts of things. You can tell us what words you like us to use or not like at btm@town.barnstable.ma.us.
I have a few. As a very self-conscious broadcaster, I know that there's a few that I use often. Fabulous, I use way too much.
Awesome. Awesome's never made it on this list.
Absolutely, I use way too much.
Absolutely.
Do you have any words that you know you overuse?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Fabulous. And there's more if I can think about them. But unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, it's time for us to move on. Coming up next, as I mentioned, we're talking to Mark Nelson. He is one of the principals at the Horsley Witten Group, the airport's environmental consulting firm. And late last year, there was some back and forth going on in local newspapers and also in public meetings about questions over drinking water quality at the wells at Barnstable Municipal Airport. And there's questions specifically relating to the ponds, Mary Dunn Pond, Upper Gate Pond, Lewis Pond, and the types of contaminants that they maybe used to contain, maybe still might contain. And Mark Nelson is certainly an expert in this particular matter as he's been monitoring it for a number of years now. So we'll talk to Mark about that. We'll talk to Mark a little bit about questions over the groundwater plume that was very close to the Cape Air hangar. So we'll get answers to those questions about as to what the water quality is really like today at the airport. Of course, things have changed over time, and we'll kind of track that with Mark in just a moment. Then after that, it's Dr. Michael Foyer as we get into our very first Cape Cod healthcare segment of the year, and I will say that this segment has guts. A terrible joke, as Dr. Foyer is a gastroenterologist, and we'll be talking to him a little bit about what he does for a living, and that's coming up in about 15 minutes. But right now, it's Mark Nelson of Horsley Witten as we continue on with this Business Wednesday edition of Barnstable This Morning. The time now is 12 minutes past 8 here at Barnstable this morning, and now it's time to talk a little bit about the business of transportation and its many attendant components. Joining us today on behalf of the Barnstable Municipal Airport is Mark Nelson, one of the principals at the Horsley Witten Group. And Mark, as I understand it, you guys have been the environmental consultants with the airport for quite some time now, yes?
Yes, good morning, Nick. We've been working with the airport going back over 10 years looking at environmental issues and groundwater protection at the airport.
Right, and so I'm really glad that we have you on today because, of course, as you well know, late last year there was some back and forth in the local newspapers and at public meetings here in the town of Barnstable, right here at Town Hall, about questions over water quality in relationship to the drinking water wells that sit right near, and I think maybe, I'm not sure if they sit on the airport property, but certainly very, very close to it. Now, I want to start first with questions about Mary Dunn, Uppergate, and Lewis Ponds. I think that that's something that people have been focusing on for quite some time now. Can you give us a little bit of the history of maybe the contaminants that had made their way into those ponds years ago, and how mitigation has helped to change that or not?
Sure. There are two ponds that sit on the airport property. One is Uppergate Pond, the other is Lewis Pond. Mm-hmm. And the airport has been a neighbor in Hyannis going back for 60, 70 years. And the stormwater drainage that collects water that comes from the runways and a few of the parking lot areas has historically been discharged out into the pond as a stormwater management technique. That's not too dissimilar from many other areas on Cape Cod and around the country where we take our stormwater and discharge it out to a lake or to a pond or a river. The issue here is that historically some of the contamination that is generated at the airport was discharged through that stormwater system and made it out to the pond. Mm-hmm. There's been a significant number of tests looking at the quality of the ponds. There's a little more work to do to understand fully what's taking place out there. But the way the ponds stand right now is the quality of the water within the ponds is fine. We've never detected any contamination in the water. Okay. There are some sediments that are primarily in the vicinity of where these outfalls discharge stormwater that contain some heavy metals and some hydrocarbon compounds. And that makes sense because if you're using an area for cars or for aircraft, you're going to have some fuel oils that may drip or leak off of those vehicles, right. And you're going to have some heavy metals, and those have been washed out and are mixed with sediments that have moved out into the bottom of the pond. Mm-hmm.
So that being said, Mark, and as we look at the map here, which shows a closer view of the two ponds that are in question here, you can see that clearly they are in Zone 2 wellhead protection area, and I think that that's kind of where the area of concern sort of comes up for people. So you say that the water quality is fine, but what exactly does fine mean?
Well, the hydrocarbons and the metals that we've detected at very low levels in the sediment on the bottom of the pond have never been detected within the water column itself. Okay. Now, the question here and the thing we always look at is these two ponds are very close to one of the wells that's used by the Hyannis Water Division, the airport well. And the materials that we've seen within the sediments have also not been seen within that well. And I think there's a good reason for that. The silt and the finer materials that create the bottom of the pond, that basically are there that create the layer that keeps the water in the ponds, is restricting the movement of these contaminants from the surface water in the ponds down into groundwater.
I see. Okay. Now that would make a lot of sense why you're not seeing those types of contaminants in the water column, and I wonder though, because I've talked with so many people who study groundwater flow and wastewater management and what have you. The soil here on Cape Cod is porous, it's sandy, water moves through faster than it does in most places, and that's why we're seeing a lot of the problems that we're seeing in our coastal waters right now. But you're pretty confident that that's not happening from the ponds to the drinking water wells.
I am confident, but I also recognize there's a little more work that needs to be done to prove that to the point where we can say that there's no longer an issue with these ponds.
Okay.
And there's a couple points that build the confidence that I have here.
Okay.
For starters, the sources of contamination that have entered the stormwater system in the past have been eliminated. There used to be some floor drains in some of the hangars, and those have all been closed. There's a much more updated stormwater management process that the airport goes through to make sure that the system is maintained and cleaned, and there are regular inspections to make sure that contamination is not moving out through the stormwater system. The other reason for confidence is that the levels of the contamination of these hydrocarbons that we see in the pond have gone down over time.
Okay.
So we've seen the results of the change in how the airport has been managed from when this probably took place in the 70s up until now. And then,
I'm sorry, Mark, go ahead.
The final point to make here, too, is that we have studied the health of the ecology in the ponds and compared that to some of the ponds in the neighborhood that aren't impacted by the airport.
Uh-huh.
And that comparison is very close. We're not seeing any ecological changes or any ecological issues associated with these two ponds. They both support a healthy ecosystem.
I also want to talk, Mark, a little bit about the groundwater plume that was called into question that was located near the Cape Air hangar. I wonder what the status is of that now, and can you track the history back for us to explain what happened there?
Sure. That plume right now is very well contained, and it's actively undergoing treatment to shrink it further to the point where we have that fully cleaned up. The source of that plume was from an old floor drain that used to sit in a hangar that was used by what was then known as Provincetown to Boston Airlines and is now used by Cape Air as one of their main hangars. The releases took place perhaps 40 years ago, long before Cape Air was using the facility. And it did create contamination in groundwater with some chlorinated solvents, some cleaning solvents, and some hydrocarbons that most likely had an impact on some of the wells that Hyannis uses, the Mar well field, which is to the southeast corner of the airport. And back in the late 80s, this plume was discovered. It was assessed for a few years, and treatment began roughly 10 to 15 years ago to shrink the plume down and contain it. It's now in a very small area immediately adjacent to the hangar on the north ramp of the airport. It's constrained by treatment systems on both sides of it, and we're actively working to completely remediate that and have a full cleanup there.
Is there any way to judge what the historical impact to the wells, as you had mentioned, was as a result of this plume?
Well, the impact to the wells was understood fairly quickly through the regular testing that takes place at any drinking water supply.
Okay. Where
compounds like hydrocarbons and solvents are regularly monitored to see if there's any impact. When that was discovered, the then Barnstable Water Company that owned the wells at the time put in a treatment facility and worked with the airport and other neighboring businesses to try to figure out where the plume was coming from. And it was tracked back over a period of time to identify this one floor drain as one of the main sources of contamination. There are likely a few others from other areas within this heavily developed zone around the airport.
Sure.
But once that was understood, the airport took on its process of fully designing a treatment system and getting that up and running. And the first order of business was to make sure that no further contamination made it down to the wells. And that was effectively done. And now we're working to shrink the size of that plume back and eliminate it altogether.
So then, with the various mitigation steps that the airport has taken to manage stormwater runoff in the parking lot, with the steps that the Horsley-Witten has instituted to contain this plume and shrink it and eliminate it eventually from the Cape Air hangar, I guess the ultimate question is, how safe are those wells near the airport?
I think they're quite safe. They're monitored regularly to detect the potential for contamination. The activities at the airport have eliminated everything that we know that could be affecting drinking water quality. There's a real understanding with the people that I work with at the airport that protecting groundwater and protecting the drinking water supplies is of paramount importance, and that's something that we take to heart very carefully in the work that we're doing as we look at environmental issues out there as well.
One-word answer, Mark. If I were to pour you a glass of water from a faucet that draws from that well, would you drink it without a Brita filter?
Absolutely.
All right, Mark. Thank you so much for joining us today and shedding some light on this situation. We definitely appreciate the good info.
Well, thank you, Nick.
All right, take care.
Yep.
It is 8:22 here at Barnstable this morning. Coming up next, our weekly Cape Cod Healthcare segment. Today we're talking to Dr. Michael Foyer, a gastroenterologist at Cape Cod Hospital. But right now, let's check the weather with Melissa Chartrand.
Good morning, Nick. A mostly sunny day today, nice and mild for this time of year. Temps actually in the high 30s. Sunset at 4:25, clear and getting quite chilly tonight, more like January temps, with temperatures going to the teens. Tomorrow, sunny, temps in the mid-30s. The weekend forecast will still not set right now. There is very much talk of snow sometime Friday heading into Saturday, but for now, let's enjoy the sunshine and nice temps. Currently, it's 32 degrees in Hyannis. There is still more to come on Barnstable this morning. Coming up next is our Cape Cod Healthcare segment, but first, let's take a look at the current weather conditions at Hyannis Harbor. When the truth is found to be lies and all.
It is 8:24 here at Barnstable this morning. It's time now for our weekly look inside the Cape Cod healthcare system. For the past year, we have been talking to wonderful doctors across the system, and our first segment of the year, it's no exception. We have guts today on the program, as it were, as we welcome in Dr. Michael Foyer, a gastroenterologist with Cape Cod Hospital. Dr. Foyer, thank you so much for being with us, and Happy New Year to you.
Thank you. Same to you.
Now, for folks, just give us a quick primer in gastroenterology. What is it that you do for people?
I must ask you, is there any way that your volume can go up a bit?
I can try and slide my microphone up on my tie a little bit more, and we'll see how that works. Is that any better for you, Dr. Foyer?
It is a little bit. Could you repeat that question for me?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you could give us a quick primer in gastroenterology. What do you do for people?
Well, what we do mostly is we take care of our stomachs from organs from the digestive system. That includes the stomach, the small intestine, the esophagus, the large intestine, the liver, and the pancreas and gallbladder. These are our major areas of expertise.
Okay. Now, in terms of diseases and conditions that you commonly deal with, what would they be?
Most often what we deal with is a pain that's located in the abdomen, whether it's in the upper abdomen or the lower abdomen. Some of the other things that we do deal with are persistent nausea and vomiting, weight loss, unexplained bleeding from the gastrointestinal tract, or unexplained anemia. We also deal with people who have difficulty with swallowing.
Okay. Now, when someone, I guess when someone comes to see you, how do you go about diagnosing a condition that they have, and then how do you determine what the best course of treatment would be?
Well, the first thing is to do a proper history and physical. After the history and physical exam, you can usually decide if any laboratory work is needed before you decide a possible endoscopic procedure. An endoscopic procedure being looking inside the intestines, the stomach, the esophagus.
Now, when you do various tests and things like that, talk to me a little bit about common diagnoses and, like I said, courses of treatment that follow.
Okay, that's fair. Usually, common diagnoses that we take care of with upper endoscopy are things like difficulty swallowing. There is some narrowing of the esophagus, the feeding tube, whether it's due to a stricture or, unfortunately, sometimes due to a tumor.
Yeah.
In the stomach, again, we do look for growths or malignancies, and we look for ulcers. We also look for sources of bleeding. That could be a blood vessel that could be just eroded and erupted that causes a large amount of bleeding. In the large intestine, our basic thing is to look for polyps or growths, because these growths or polyps may eventually become cancerous if left untaken care of.
So you get to, I wonder about causes of gastrointestinal problems. Obviously, I wonder if how associated they are to your genetic history, or if it deals mostly with diet, lack of taking care of yourself health-wise. Is it a combination of all those things?
Well, I think it's a combination. You know, genetics certainly play a major part in it. You know, some of these, especially with malignancies. If there's a family history, especially among first-degree relatives, then the incidence of malignancies goes up in the patient itself. Dietary factors, alcohol certainly can play a factor, especially in liver disease and pancreatic disease that we see. Lack of exercise has been associated with an increase of malignancy of the gastrointestinal tract, and other malignancies aside from gastrointestinal malignancies, such as ovarian or uterine, have also been associated with gastrointestinal malignancies.
Okay. In terms of how best to protect yourself from things like, let's say, colon cancer, which is something that I'm sure that you have seen a fair bit of in your day, what would be your best advice to people looking to at least keep themselves checked out on a regular basis and maybe avoid it altogether?
The best advice that can be given today is the gold standard for taking care of patients as far as screening for colon cancer is colonoscopy. That's a visualization of the colon or the large intestine. At that time, when it's done, a tube is inserted into the rectum and advanced around the whole large intestine, and abnormalities are looked for and frequently can be dealt with right at the time of the procedure.
Now, for folks who haven't had a colonoscopy before, I know that that word creates a little bit of a cringe in some people's minds. Can you explain to us how the procedure works and whether or not it is as brutally unpleasant as some people think that it might be?
Well, sure, I'll be glad to. A colonoscopy is done when people are sedated. A flexible tube is inserted into the rectum and advanced around to the beginning of the colon or the large intestine. The difficult part for many people is the preparation, because obviously the colon has to be as clean as possible so that you do a good job in examining the entire colon.
Sure.
The procedure itself is usually done with sedation so that there's very little discomfort during the procedure. Sometimes the air that's inserted to look well into the colon is expelled afterwards, which can relieve any abdominal cramps that occur. The procedure itself usually takes about 20 minutes to do.
Okay. Now, how often should people have it done?
Well, it depends. I mean, the recommendation right now is that if there's absolutely no family history and there are no warning symptoms such as bleeding through the rectum or weight loss, that it's usually recommended that screening begins at age 50.
Okay.
And then what happens is, assuming that there's nothing on that exam, then the recommendation at this point is every 10 years for a screening colonoscopy.
Okay, so it's not necessarily like a prostate cancer exam for men or a breast cancer exam for women?
Not at all.
Okay. Now, I realize I've been asking you kind of general questions up to this point, Dr. Foyer, but I have a specific interest in something that is a lot more specific as it relates to gastroenterology. A friend of mine is working on something called the specific carbohydrate diet for Crohn's disease, IBS, and other gastrointestinal diseases that involve strictures and other things that you had mentioned before. What do you know about it, and do you know it to be effective?
Well, medically, I don't think it's, in the medical literature, I don't think it's been proven to do anything. That doesn't mean that that there are anecdotal stories about, these things helping people. Using complex carbohydrates rather than simple carbohydrates, avoiding fats in the diet can certainly promote colon health.
Okay, so but in terms of it being an effective treatment option, it's more of a fringe option than it is a mainstream
I would think
option.
at this point. I mean, I don't think there's true documentation yet, in the medical literature. That doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means that there's no true controlled studies to prove that.
Interesting. I find it to be an interesting treatment, at least to consider, in addition to the conventional treatments that happen more often. But when we talk about something like Crohn's disease or IBS, what are the more conventional treatments for those types of conditions?
Well, the thing to do with it depends on irritable bowel syndrome, whether it's predominant constipation or predominant diarrhea. Most people do use fiber in the diets, and if necessary, if there's pain, try and decrease spasm in the intestine by using antispasmodics.
Mm-hmm.
In Crohn's disease right now, the treatments are variable. The steroids, cortisone used to be the standard treatment. Now there are other things that are used. Sometimes cortisone is used to just get somebody under control, but now there are a variety of therapies that are being offered. Some are called biological therapies, which are being given on a regular basis, and we seem to have a better handle of what we can do for patients with Crohn's disease at this point.
Well, Dr. Foyer, it's been a very interesting conversation, and you've been a wonderful guest to talk to, so I do hope you come back and join us on Barnstable This Morning sometime soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You have a good day, and Happy New Year.
All right, same to you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
It is 8:33 here at Barnstable this morning. Just out of curiosity, in case you were wondering, the specific carbohydrate diet is a new treatment that's being developed, like Dr. Foyer said, not proven to be definitively effective for Crohn's disease, IBS, and the like, but it involves a gluten-free diet, a sugar-free diet, to attempt to control some of the symptoms of such diseases. In any case, we thank Dr. Foyer for joining us and look forward to having him back again in the future. Coming up again in a couple of minutes, we'll talk to Elizabeth Werfbane for the first time in 2011. She is the executive director of the Hyannis Main Street Bid. But before we get to Elizabeth, we'll get to Melissa Chartrand. She has a look at today's news.
Good morning, Nick. It's clear and a cold 32 degrees in Hyannis right now. Beacon Hill will be bustling today as the new legislative session gets underway. Newly elected State Senator Dan Wolf and Barnstable State Representatives Randy Hunt and David Vieira will be among the many sworn in. Congressman Bill Keating will begin his work representing the 10th District on Capitol Hill when he is sworn in later today in D.C. The entire fire community feels a great loss as retired Chief Richard Fahrenkopf passed away Monday night at the age of 82. A dedicated public servant, Fahrenkopf had a 35-year career with the Hyannis Fire Department. The father of 6, 4 of his sons have followed a career in fire service, including 2 serving as captains at the Hyannis Fire Department. Visiting hours are this Sunday from 4 to 8 p.m. at the John Lawrence Funeral Home at Marston's Mills, and funeral services on Monday at 10 a.m. at St. Francis Xavier Church in Hyannis. Residents can receive several free vaccinations from influenza, pneumonia, and DTaP during the Health Department's multi-vaccination clinic next Friday, January 14th, at the Barnstable High School Field House from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. You can call the Health Department for more details. The American Red Cross Cape Cod and Islands chapter is encouraging the public to be prepared for the next winter storm. A special checklist with tips on how to be better prepared before, during, and after is available on their website at cciredcross.org. In sports, the Celtics will be shooting for their 3rd straight victory when the San Antonio Spurs come to the Garden tonight. Game time is at 7:30. The Bruins are idle tonight. They return home tomorrow to face the Minnesota Wild at 7. In local sports action, the girls' hockey team takes on Medfield at the HYCC this afternoon at 4 p.m. And while you're there, you can get tickets. Hundreds of skaters from around the world will travel to Hyannis to compete in the U.S. Figure Skating Second Nations Cup this April at the HYCC. So you can pick up your tickets or get full details at the HYCC website. The Hyannis Golf Course on Route 132 Hyannis is booking tee times and outings for the 2011 season. Membership renewals are also available. The Cape Cod Riptide Girls Softball Program will be running Friday evening clinics at the Barnstable Horace Mann Charter School Gym. That's in Marston's Mills from 6 to 8 p.m. this Friday, January 7th and on the 21st. The clinics cover all skills. It's $15 a session. You may get more information by emailing capecodriptides@yahoo.com. Additional clinics will be in February, March, and April. We now turn our attention to the seas in Nantucket Sound, where our friends at Highline Cruises welcome us on board into the wheelhouse of passenger ferry Gray Lady. We will hear a marine weather report from Captain Andy Castrenz while we take a look at the current weather conditions at Hyannis Harbor.
Good morning, Barnstable. This is the Highline Daily Boat Report. I'm Captain Castrenz here on the high-speed ferry Gray Lady. Out on Nantucket Sound this morning, we have clear skies, a northwest wind, 10 to 15 knots. Seas are northwest, about 1 foot. Visibility is 10 to 12 miles. The water temperature is 38 degrees. The next high tide in Hyannis will be at 12:35 this afternoon. For the rest of the day, we expect the wind to remain out of the northwest 10 to 15, maybe gusting to around 20. Once again, for Barnstable this morning, this is Captain Castrenz aboard the high-speed ferry Gray Lady. We hope everyone out there has a good day.
Welcome back to Barnstable this morning. It's Business Wednesday, the first edition of the year here in 2011. I'm Nick Cortez alongside Melissa Chartrand. So a big day on Beacon Hill today, Melissa.
I'll say.
As you've been reporting all day long, today is the swearing-in ceremony for the 3 new state legislators that we have. Of course, State Senator Dan Wolf and Representatives Dave Vieira and Randy Hunt. We had Dan Wolf on the show for the first time yesterday, and the senator, well, the soon-to-be senator, I think probably senator-elect for the next 3 or 4 hours or so, will be joining us each and every Tuesday around 8:40 in the morning. If you'd like to see his very first segment, do check out our online archives at town.barnstable.ma.us and just wait for the show to download, scroll all the way to the 8:40 slot, and listen to what Dan Wolf had to say on the eve of his swearing-in ceremony. And we certainly look forward to talking to him again next Tuesday and for many into the future. Additionally speaking, we are working on and very close to making Representatives Vieira and Hunt part of our show, and we certainly look forward very much to doing that in the next couple of weeks here. And we'll have good Democratic and Republican representation on Barnstable this morning, and we look forward to bringing that kind of political balance to you each and every week here. Coming up, last but certainly not least here on Business Wednesday, it's Elizabeth Werfbane. One of our favorite guests from 2010 is back again for another year of discussion. She's the Executive Director of the Hyannis Main Street Business Improvement District. And today with Elizabeth, we'll take a look at her priorities for 2011. We'll also talk to her about some great progress being made on Main Street right now, and she certainly played no small role in pushing some of these issues to the forefront. Of course, we're talking a little bit about what we talked about with Chief McDonald yesterday on the program, the Hyannis Main Street substation coming back to the street, and also we'll talk a little bit about the NOAA shelter's plan to reimagine itself, reduce the number of beds, and so on. That's all coming up with Elizabeth Werfbane next as we wrap up Business Wednesday here at Barnstable this morning. It's 8:41 here at Barnstable this morning, and we wrap up Business Wednesday, the first one of 2011, with Elizabeth Werfbane. She's back for another year of discussion with us, and she is the Executive Director of the Hyannis Main Street Business Improvement District. Happy New Year, Elizabeth. How are you?
Happy New Year. Very well, thank you.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear it. Now, Elizabeth, a lot to talk about today. A lot of developments have happened over the course of the past couple of weeks in terms of issues related to Main Street Hyannis, and I want to get to those in just a moment. But first, I want to talk a little bit more generally about what you're looking forward to in 2011 on Main Street.
Well, as you probably are talking about coming up, a better sense of, of safety and security.
Sure.
Which I think is going to become more of a reality, with substations, which we're going to talk about in the evolving of the homeless shelter. But I want people to really feel it and see it, and that the perception to shift. So that's important, is a perceptual change in how people view Main Street. What's also is important is putting in a few more businesses that are very necessary to the street, because we have a couple of good vacancies on Main Street. Another piece of the pie that I want to attack is the clean aspect of Main Street. I really want to get down to some real nitty-gritty pieces, like buy this gum buster machine, which is, they use it in Times Square, and I just came back from the Bahamas. There is no gum on that sidewalk in the Bahamas. It is pristine over at Atlantis. That's where we were.
Oh, sure.
No, you're not allowed. No birds go to the bathroom over that place. It is so perfect. And because people are up at 5 in the morning and everything is washed away, it's a really high standard. And that's what I want to set for Main Street. I want to experiment this summer and try and have a high standard for, cleanliness and beauty on the street.
I always love your level of ambition, Elizabeth, but I think comparing an exclusive resort to Main Street Hyannis is that not a step too far? I mean, this is a place where people live and work every day, and like a place like Atlantis is where people go and, chill out by the pool and sip frozen drinks.
And everybody's really well off, and they're all on vacation. I mean, and it's so, it's so contrived, of course. And same with Disney. Anywhere, like Nantucket, anywhere where you have a really high level of, of control, you can manage it. And of course, when you have a lot of really well-off people, you have the money to do it. But I always like to go and see places that have a high level of expectations and standards, and then try and bring them back and see, how you can, it's like having a public school in New York run by a private school headmaster, and see what you can do. I mean, it's very interesting. So I'm pretty excited to, bring this high standard to Main Street and just see what happens. So I have some new ideas, and one of, this gum buster, because if you really look around, there's gum everywhere. It could just, raise the level in a subtle way. Yeah. The other thing I saw a lot of, and I'm very disappointed in our Christmas lights this year on Main Street. I think I've mentioned it to you.
Yes.
I went around and I've been looking at other lights in other places, and I think it's just one of those things that can slip away, when you're looking at it in March. You know what I mean? And then by August, and then you go, well, it's the economy, and you come up with things. And then in December you go, oh my God, these lights are gray, or they're not quite what So I'm going to try to be fresh and attack it the first quarter of this year and have some nice meetings and really, look at inspirational, ways to light up the street. Because people look for the village to inspire them at Christmas time.
Yeah,
the mall is cozy because it's not snowing on you, but really people are looking, they want to go down Main Street and that tradition and see those pretty charming lights.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously with the economic troubles and things like that, maybe people wonder to themselves, well, why the heck is she focusing on Christmas lights? But I actually agree with you. I think that the aesthetics, what you see, what you experience when you just walk down the street is what's going to encourage you to either be there or not be there.
Exactly. And that's what we can offer, because we are a village. We don't have a giant umbrella, so if it snows, you will get, damp. But on the other hand, they're looking for something authentic, and I think we have some of it. We just have to pull it together, and and I think the whole street should jive with itself. It should all be continuous. So that's something interesting, and I kind of want to follow that theme through all year round. Like the uplighting, which I talked to you about. like the whole street together should, be tied together. The whole East End and the West End. It shouldn't just be like you have pockets of, nothingness or empty buildings. Even if a building's empty, there should be a sense that it's all a main street, and that there's no funny dark corners. And so that's something I really aesthetically want to do for Main Street, be it through lighting or certain kind of consistent decor, beef up our flowers, so it just pleasantly comes together.
Sure. Now, going back to that safety and security issue that you started off with, I do want to talk a little bit about the progress that's been made with the Hyannis Main Street substation coming back. And at this point, it is all but a done deal for the station to come back. We talked to Chief McDonald yesterday. He said that he and the committee of people who reviewed 2 potential locations to put the substation on Main Street have preferred the location at 491 Main Street, which is right on the corner of Main and High School Road. Talk to me a little bit about what you know about that location and whether or not you like it.
Oh, it's a great location. It's so visible and giant windows, and High School Road is a big cross street, so that's very important. You get out fast. You have the parking lot across the street, and sometimes that parking lot has created issues with people congregating there. So having that substation will help a great deal in the summertime. It's not really losing a prime retail spot. It could be a nice retail spot, but it's not like it's nestled in between 5 other stores and all of a sudden a police substation. It does stand alone, and I think it's a win-win for the chief because I think the officers will like it there. They won't feel trapped or they'll have some autonomy. It's a great spot, and the owner, Mr. O'Neill, has been very generous, to kind of sort of help make sure it's the right match for the police department. So all in all, I think it's great. And again, perception. Sure, obviously, we just want people to feel when you see security, you feel safer, and you can, let your teenage children walk up to get the ice cream because that the street has the safety measurements. And so I think that's very important.
Yeah, there's no question about that, and I couldn't agree with you more on that one as far as the at the very least, the perception, the police presence, knowing that public safety is right there on the street, ready to respond, and knowing that they can stay down there more often because they don't need to go back to the Finney's Lane police headquarters to do paperwork at the end of their shift or whatever the case may be. So it's a positive thing. A multi-year lease is, like I said, pretty close to being a done deal at this point, pending town manager approval. Of course, that's what's left in the process. But the chief told us yesterday that April 1st would be the move-in date over there, which I think is a really exciting thing, well before the summer gets going.
Yeah, that's great. Perfect.
Now, let's talk a little bit about another issue that is affecting Main Street, not necessarily on Main Street, but this is a conversation that we really took up in earnest, I think maybe around June of last year or so, and that was the issue of the NOAA shelter, pretty much the homeless shelter of not only the town of Barnstable, but of Cape Cod in general. There is now a draft report being circulated to folks like yourself that was put together that would essentially reimagine the NOAA shelter, reduce the number of beds, and it's made a number of other recommendations as to how the burden of that location can be lifted a little bit from the village of Hyannis. What are your thoughts on what you've read and what you know so far?
Well, I think it's very encouraging. It's a wonderful document in that it has in it aspects that we've been all worried about. Is this going to get bigger? The shelter. Are we the regional homeless center? Are we creating a monster daily? Is there a backfill every time you pull someone out and more people coming in? Are they coming from all over the country? There are all these questions that have to be addressed in the new model, and we're very proud of the committee and actually the homeless shelter management for looking to address these issues. They're difficult issues. Homelessness has so many more connotations to it with associated with mental illness and addiction that's almost impossible to solve.
Sure.
But on the other hand, we can't just make Hyannis a mecca for this. So it's very encouraging because there are guidelines within this document that will help the problem, instead of just float the problem. And the NOAA shelter is going to partner with Duffy, which is great. And Duffy has case management, and case management means, solutions, finding places for people, not just, housing them. The homeless shelter, they want to try to reduce the beds. I mean, are they guaranteeing it? That's to be, found out in the future. But at least all these issues that we have are being addressed, and it's not polarizing anymore. It's not like you're bad for bringing it up. You're not nice.
What happened to change the tenor of that conversation?
I think a catharsis occurred where, originally in the church, at the Federated Church, there was some finger pointing, and people realized how silly that is. Because really everybody in the room wants to solve the problem.
Yep.
And polarizing doesn't solve a problem. And I think once certain egos sort of got out of the way, or people realized maybe that they were on the wrong track, one can become defensive in their mode, and then you're not solving an issue if you're always in defense. So I think everybody was sort of in a defense mode, I'm right, you're wrong. But it's really that, let's find the solution. So I think these kind of things take time, and maybe new faces, new kumbaya, and so I just think it's a shift. Now, we'll see next year, what happens, and but it looks like really there's a commitment on all sides to make change. So.
It would certainly seem so, and this committee appointed by Housing Assistance Corporation, I would have to imagine, wouldn't have spent the time on creating this plan if there wasn't serious and earnest intent to make a few changes and make things a little bit better for the village of Hyannis.
Absolutely, and if it wasn't for the Main Street Initiative and the people behind, all of that, like Tom Lynch, and Deb Commerce and Deb Crow and the chief of police, really, slow and steady. They really have studied other places. I came in with other, models that are working, because I was new to the committee, and I said, wait, this isn't just, a dead end. There are places that have, solutions. And suddenly, I think, and then Rick Presby was perked up and said, maybe, let's hear those. Committee. And so then this second committee, being fresh, took the information from the first committee. And I think that it's just something that takes a lot of time and plotting, to get to, a good plan. And there's a wonderful person on the committee called Bob Gielek. I don't know if you've ever talked to him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He is a, kind of a real business plan type of person. And this, when you put a business plan with a nonprofit, you can get really great results.
Well,
so that's what's needed.
Of course, it's a brand new year. Perfect time for change, and it would seem that a lot of the positive changes that you had hoped for and talked about with us here on the program and with everyone else in the town of Barnstable over the course of the past year are beginning to come to fruition, and it's been nice to track that process from just a kernel of an idea to something actually changing right now as we turn over to another new year. And Elizabeth, I have to tell you, I'm very much looking forward to continuing to talk to you each and every week here on Barnstable this morning.
Thank you. Well, our next one will be Clean Street. Right?
Sure, yeah. Honestly, if you get that gum buster, I really want to. I want to get out there and zap some gum. I really do.
Yeah, I think actually that would be very interesting. So we'll see. We'll do it before and after.
All right, shoot for the moon, and you'll end up among the gum on the sidewalk at the very least.
The stars.
All right, take care, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
It's 8:55 here at Barnstable this morning. Almost through with our first Business Wednesday edition of the year, but of course we have the community calendar segment to bring to you in just a moment where we get you up to date on meetings and events happening around town. Before we do that, though, let's talk about weather with Melissa Chartrand.
Good morning, Nick. It's a mostly sunny day today, nice and mild for this time of year. Temps in the high 30s. Sunset at 4:25 this afternoon. It will be clear and quite chilly tonight with temps in the teens. Tomorrow, more sunshine and temps in the mid-30s. The weekend forecast, we are still not sure. There is talk of snow sometime Friday heading into Saturday, so we'll keep an eye on that. Currently, it's 32 degrees here in Hyannis. There's still more to come on Barnstable this morning. Coming up next is our meeting and community calendar. But first, let's take a quick look at that sunshine in Hyannis Harbor this morning.
Time now for the community calendar, where we get you up to date on meetings and events happening around town over the course of the next couple of days here. Let's start with our meeting schedule for this evening. What do we have today, Melissa?
At 7 p.m., it's the Zoning Board of Appeals in the Town Hall hearing room.
Also at 7 p.m., the Hyannis Main Street Waterfront Historic District Commission will meet. I believe that would be with the Selectmen's Conference Room.
Yes. Events taking place around town. Massachusetts low-income households may qualify for assistance with heating costs through the state's Fuel Assistance Program right through April 30th, 2011. You can receive more information by calling Claudia at the Barnstable Senior Center, 508-862-4750.
An open house for the new Cape Cod Medical Reserve Corps Explorer Post 911 will be at the former Barnstable County Jail in Barnstable Village next Tuesday, January 11th at 6:30 in the evening. Young adults between 14 and 19 are invited to learn about opportunities to explore health careers and ways to help in an emergency. Call Corps Director Jean Roma at 508-375-6641 for more information.
The Cape Cod Challenger Club is hosting a variety of winter activities on Saturday mornings and Sunday afternoons in their Osterville location on Bums River Road. You can get more information at capecodchallenger.org.
Cape Cod Community College is accepting original plays for workshop readings in its Play With Your Food series, with performances set for February and March. You can send your work in to Nancy Willits at nwillits@capecod.edu by January 21st.
Junior Tech is offering an Introduction to Classic Boat Building class through the Cape Cod Maritime Museum. That begins next Wednesday, January 12th for grades 5 through 8. You can get all the details and register by logging on to juniortech.org.
The town of Barnstable is looking for artists and artisans interested in selling their artwork as part of the 7th season of the Harbor Your Art Summer Shanty program right in Bismore Park on Hyannis Harbor. Applications are due by January 21st. All artwork will be juried, and artist selections are expected to be made later in January and February. So this is coming up really soon, Melissa.
Really soon. We have a huge amount, a tremendous response. So it's very exciting with all sorts of interesting work.
So you can be a little bit selective then.
We can, and we try to do that because we jury not only for quality but for variety.
Excellent.
We don't want 6 shanties with photography.
So if you're an artist out there and you're looking for a great opportunity to sell your artwork throughout the course of the summer, the shanties have become extremely popular over the course of the last 6 or 7 years here, and it's a great opportunity to, really, a lot of the artists do pretty well for themselves.
They do very well, Nick, and we've talked many times that it's not only dollars that they do well, but so much exposure.
Absolutely. It's a nice thing to do down there.
It is.
Who
would want to go to work there every day to go work, sit by the harbor, taking a view.
Maybe we could do the show from a shanty.
Yes, that would be great.
That would be great. A live TV drop would be a little bit tough out at the artist shanties, but still, it'd be fun.
I like that idea.
In any case, we would love to hear from you out there. So if you have suggestions, questions for our guests, any types of thoughts, weather pictures especially,
yes,
please send them to our email address, which is right below, btm@town.barnstable.ma.us. Okay, coming up on our Thursday edition of Barnstable This Morning, we'll start with Town Council President Fred Chirigotis. Of course, the Town Council does meet tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. in the Town Hall hearing room for their first meeting of 2011. After that, it's our weekly water protection segment. We will talk to George Hoyfelder, who is the director of the Barnstable County Department of Health and Environment. After that, it's Finance Director Mark Milne. And we'll talk with Demetrius Atlas, who is now the dean of the Cape and Islands legislative delegation. I think that he dubbed himself that a couple of weeks ago, but of course that's Demetrius' style. We love talking to him, and we'll talk to him again tomorrow. And of course we'll close up the show with Madeline Taylor, our Director of Senior Services. We certainly hope that you join us then. We'll be here with you live on Thursday from 7:30 to 9 a.m., and we're here with you 5 days a week from 7:30 to 9 right here on Barnstable channels, Channel 18. That'll do it for us for today. For Melissa Chartrand, I'm Nick Cortez. We'll see you right back here tomorrow morning for another live edition of Barnstable This Morning. Until then, take care, everybody.